Hi everyone, it's Olivia from the land of video editing. So this video is actually the Photoshop segment of my DIY Risograph Memo Pads video, which I am still in the process of editing and which I will release next week. So I wanted to break out this Photoshop segment into its own video for a couple reasons. The first is if I incorporated this into the full video, then that video is just gonna be too long. And the second is for those who are just interested in the Photoshop segment of it, I just wanted to make it easier for them to find it. So that's why I decided just to make it its own standalone video. So yeah, if you are interested in watching the whole process of how I made some really cute Risograph memo pads, that video is coming next week, but in the meantime, here is the Photoshop segment. So yeah, thank you so much for watching and I will see you soon. Alright everyone, so I finished my paintings and drawings of strawberries on Procreate and I have imported it into my computer and set it up in Photoshop. So I've exported it as a Photoshop file and now it's open in Photoshop. So I'm gonna start putting together the layout of the memo pad. So the first thing I'm actually going to do is to open a brand new file, and I'm going to make it the exact dimensions of the offcut sheets of paper, which is 6 by 11 inches. So actually it's gonna be 11 wide and 6 inches tall and 300 resolution. And okay, so that looks good. So the memo pads, I want them to be 5 by 5 and I've given them an extra 1/8 of an inch bleed all around. So I'm just gonna set up the rulers to do that. And actually this should be, let me just go into preferences, file, preferences, units and rulers, and I'm gonna make sure that it's set to inches so that it's easier later down the line to make measurements. So I'm gonna hit OK and now it's in inches. So as you can see, this is 11 inches wide and 6 inches tall. The next thing I'm gonna do is move the rulers around so that I can make sure that the memo pads that I've designed fit nicely into the 6 by 11 offcuts. So first things first, this is my 11-inch mark and this is 0 for start. Now the memo pad is going to be 5 inches by 5 inches, so it's going to be a square. So what I'm going to do is 5 times 2 is 10, and we're going to be printing 2 memo pads per sheet of offcut. So 2 memo pads, so let's just put a ruler right in the middle, right smack in the middle. And so 5.5 minus 5 is 0.5. So let's just put a ruler here in the 0.5 inch mark. And then we'll do the same thing. 11. So, okay. So now this should be 5 inches wide. And I'm actually going to take my ruler tool and open up my info tab right here. And I'm just going to measure that to make sure it is indeed 5 inches wide, which is correct. So now this is 6 inches tall. So I got to cut off a 1/2 inch from the top and 1/2 inch. No, wrong. Yeah, there. I'm gonna take off a 1/2 inch from the top and a 1/2 inch from the bottom to make 5 inches tall. Now let's take our ruler tool, measure that again, 5 inches. So there's probably an easy way to do this, but what I'm going to do next is I'm going to start putting in the bleed. So I'm going to put, this is 0.125 inches back. So that's that bleed. And then 0.125 inches that way. Which means actually that this is too small. I should make this wider by that. and wider by 1/8 of an inch this way. So now I think this should still be 5 inches. Yes? Yes, correct. So I'm going to add another bleed mark there, another bleed mark here, and the top and bottom should be straightforward. It's just 1/8 of an inch further out. Awesome. So I actually, in Procreate, I created 2 groups. One has one design and the other one has the other design, which is the top border. So now I'm going to start converting this colored image into grayscale for printing on the Riso, and that means I just have to collapse the red layer into just one and the turquoise layer into another one. And I think that's just good practice so that everything is organized and easy to print. So first things first, okay, so I've got this turquoise layer, and then on top of that there's this red layer. So I gotta subtract this red layer from this turquoise layer because the Riso is transparent. So if I print this turquoise as is by itself, this red is gonna overlay on top of whatever is under it that's turquoise, and it's just not gonna look good. It's gonna show up. So what I'm gonna do is hit Control and click on that transparent layer where the red is. Then I'm going to go back into this layer. See, I've selected that turquoise layer and I'm just going to hit Delete. So deselect, as you can see, the shape of that red strawberry is now being subtracted from this green layer. Now let's take a look at this other one. This turquoise layer is on top of this one red strawberry layer. So I'm going to do what I did earlier as well and hit Control to select the turquoise bits, then go back to my red layer and then hit Delete to clear off the turquoise from any of that red. And I'm just going to keep going as I move up my layer stack. So deselect, here's all the reds. So I'm gonna hit Control to select the reds, click on the turquoise and hit Delete. There, now that area is knocked out, as we like to call it. Now I'm going to, this turquoise layer, it looks like it's just on top of the other turquoise layer, so actually I can just select the both of them, or even just select the one and hit Control E to collapse that downwards. So now they're just one layer. Let's take a look at this. So this layer is just lightening up the turquoise in order to make these veins. So that can just be collapsed because that's just part of the turquoise layer. And the last one is these strawberry seeds. The seeds is just lightening up the red. So I'm just going to collapse the seeds into the red layer like so. So now they're all collapsed. Alright, so now I'm going to do just one more knockout, and that's to knock out this turquoise from this red so that it doesn't overprint over the red. So I'm going to hit Control click, and I'm going to go in here and I'm going to hit Delete on that final red layer. So now it's all knocked out. So now I can just collapse all of the turquoise layers with each other and all of the red layers with each other. So layer 10, layer 11, and layer 14 are all turquoise. So I'm going to select all of them and hit Control E to merge them. And then I'm going to click on layer 9 and layer 13. You can also merge layers if you don't remember those shortcut keys. You can merge layers up here. Merge layers, Control E. There. So this is my red layer. This is my turquoise layer. So now we're going to convert these two color layers into grayscale for printing with the Riso. So actually I'm gonna make a copy of these two so I don't lose anything, and I'm just gonna hide that away. And let's work on the turquoise layer first. So I'm going to hide the red layer, and I'm going to make it black and white, like so, by hitting this button. And then I have to adjust the levels a little bit. So over here, my properties, I want a little bit more contrast. Contrast is not a bad thing when you're printing on the Riso, because sometimes the value shifts can be quite subtle and you want a very clear read. In this case, it's going to be about that size. Actually, I have a sample here of what the pad should be sized at, so always have a sheet of paper ready in case you're wondering what it should look like in life size. So this is life size for on my screen. Yeah, that looks good. That looks good to me. I think that will be quite readable. Maybe I'll lighten that up a little bit so it's not too much. I think that's good. That's good enough. There's not a lot of gradations here anyway, so this is just fine. So when that's done, I'm going to make this into its own folder, and I'm gonna name it turquoise. So next is the red, so I'm gonna make another black and white adjustment layer just for the red. And I'm going to also adjust the values. I want it to be fairly solid looking, and I also want that contrast, like that. But maybe not as much contrast as the leaves. See that? The contrast is not that much. Actually, I'm just going to make sure this is isolated to just the turquoise. There we go. If you don't hit those arrows, then it's going to affect all the layers below the adjustment. So that's why you want to hit these arrows right here so that this adjustment is isolated just to the layer immediately under it, which is the turquoise layer in this case. So I'm going to do the same for this black and white and also this levels. So as you can see, the contrast in the leaves is much higher than the contrast in the strawberry seeds with the strawberry. But I think I'm going to make it just slightly lighter again so that it'll be a clear read when it goes to print. Okay, I think that looks good. So we're going to select all of these and put it in a folder and call it red. Let's work on the second one. All right, so this one has fewer layers actually. So the red and the seeds. Okay, actually, what I'm gonna do first, since all the reds at the bottom and all the greens are on top, is I could just collapse all of the red layers already. There's no layering in this case, or there's not a lot of layering going on. And then all the turquoise layers are just up top over here, so just collapse those. And the last step is to make sure that anything up top is being knocked out of anything in the bottom. So I did the control click to select the outlines of whatever's up top, and then go into my red layer and then hit delete. And now that whole thing is knocked out. So now there's no overlap, which is what we want. So now we're going to convert these into grayscale for the Riso. So I'm going to do what I did earlier, which is just make a copy of both of them so I can save these ones. And we're gonna turn this turquoise layer into grayscale. So let's hide the red layer for now and hit black and white and apply that to the layer below. And then I'm gonna hit levels. Oops. Hit levels. I think that's good enough. I'll adjust the lightness later. Put that in a folder. Call it turquoise. Next, we're gonna work on the red layer. So I'm gonna hit the black and white adjustment layer, hit this arrow so that it'll apply just to this layer right here, and then hit levels so I can adjust the levels and clamp that. You might want to make the values a bit more extreme so that it'll be read even clearer by the Riso. Something like that. That looks good to me. And then go this way. That's the red layer. Okay, so now I gotta separate these strawberries individually so that I can place them all over the memo pad because it'll be an all over strawberry design. So I think what I'll actually have to do is to make another duplicate and hide that. So these are all just my spare copies because what I'm gonna end up doing is collapsing this into just one layer and collapsing this into just one layer there. And I'm gonna label it right here, red, turquoise, and I'm gonna move that out of their individual folders and delete these two. So now we have the turquoise that's sitting right on top of the red. And so first I'm gonna make a selection of the red, see my red layer selected, and I'm going to right click, layer via cut. There, so now it's moved that to its own layer. And same thing with the turquoise, I'm going to select the leaves and the stems that are on top of it, and with this layer selected, right click, layer via cut, move them together, and now it's just the one strawberry and the one set of leaves and stem. And this is a strawberry turk 1, strawberry red 1. And I'm just gonna do the rest of the strawberries. So again, select, right click, layer via cut, select, right click, layer via cut, move it up, hide the two. You can see that it's just all in their own layers now. This is strawberry turk 2, strawberry turk 2. Alright, and now for the third set, click the red, right click, layer via cut, select, right click, layer via cut. Alright, so move that up so they're together. Okay, so that's strawberry straw turk 3, straw turk 3. And this last one, this last remaining one, oops, this is why it's strawberry red 2, strawberry red 2. strawberry red 3, straw turk 4, straw red 4. Okay, so I'm just gonna place the strawberries now. So I'm gonna select both of them and I'm going to place it here. I'll place this one. Oops. Make sure both of them are selected so you can move them at the same time. Place that one here. Select these 2 layers. Place that here. Select these 2. Alright, so I like this placement, so I think what I can do now is put all the turquoises together, like so. I'm just moving all the turquoises together in one area, so I can collapse them all at the same time. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And Control E to collapse. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yep. Control E to collapse. So the last thing to do is to lighten up this whole pattern because we want to be able to write over the strawberries after we print them into memo pads. We don't want them to be too dark or it'll be hard to see our writing. So now I'm going to fade it a little bit by adding another levels. And I'm not going to isolate the effect. I'm not going to hit this button. I'm just going to lighten both layers up simultaneously by bringing up this black slider like so. And as you can see, it's lightening up everything. I think this is pretty good. Okay, future Olivia talking to past Olivia. After printing some test prints of the memos, I actually had to go back in and lighten this particular design even further because it was just printing too dark. And I'm going to do an insert right about now to compare the before and after. So yeah, the lighter one is the one that is better to write on. So the settings for that is over here. I believe the settings for the stem. We're going to do the stem first. The settings for the stem is going to be 155 lightness. So that's quite a bit lighter than we had before. I'm just going to duplicate this levels and I'm going to put it over the strawberry red. And I'm going to isolate this 155 darkness to just the stem. And then for the strawberry, I know that the strawberry is looking quite dark. It should be even lighter. It should be 202 or thereabouts. So you could see that the strawberry is barely visible. But this lightness of red seems to yield the best looking red when you print it in memo pad form, where it's still easy to write on, and when you write on it, your writing is still readable, but the red is still there and the strawberry pattern is still quite evident. And I think this is sort of like the limit of how dark the red should print. Alright, so now it's time to bring these designs into our Strawberry Memos template that we made earlier. So this file size is actually quite large. When I drew it in Procreate, I drew it at twice the size of printing. So if I go to image size, you can see that it's 10.5 inches. But what we need is 5.25. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to resize it here and save a copy. So we're going to do roughly 50%. I'm going to click on this folder group and I'm going to duplicate group into the strawberry memos template. And I'm going to move that into the memo pad. So over here on this second line is where the art is going to get cut off. So this is just for bleed. And we don't want the strawberry to be too close to the edge. So I'm going to move that strawberry a little bit lower like that. And I think that's good. And then we're going to go back, click on the second design right here. You can see that when I hit the selection tool, the blue bounding box is extending beyond the borders of this canvas. And that's because I have designs going out of the bounding box. It needs to be cropped down to size. So I'm going to hit crop and check delete crop pixels. And when I hit enter, you can see that there are these strawberries that are going outside of the bounds of my canvas. And that's because I moved the strawberries to those areas. So now I have to get rid of the excess art. So I'm just going to hit enter to crop it. And now I can go into my selection. As you can see, the selection is the same size as my canvas. So I'm going to duplicate this group, bring it into my strawberry memos template, and now I should be able to move it to the proper place. Ta-da! And the last step for me before going to final print is just adding these trim marks. So yeah, let's get going with the printing.